Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy and proud that you invited me to that fine conference here because of two things. The one thing is I'm a representative of East Germany, and mostly the international discourse is dominated by the West German view about history. And that's why I'm really glad to get an insight in East German society and thinking. I'm now a member of State Parliament of Brandenburg since 15 years, so I have the actual impression of half of that period of 30 years that for a woman being 42 years now, you maybe think it's whole generation and changed a lot, but I will give you some figures that will show you that development in a society is a slow thing. The other thing I'm really happy to be here is to hear the sound of the Russian language that I haven't practiced for decades, but gives me the feeling of being young again because I had to learn it in my school days. So I excuse myself not being fluent in Russian, but I like it, I love it. So first of all, there's a question, really tough question. There's still a war between West and East Germany. You may think from a perspective of Poland or Ukraine and some other transformation countries that the East German people were the lucky guys of transformation process. We stepped in without any negotiations from one day to the other in the European Union. We had to have our rich sisters and brothers in the West, so they supported us strongly with amounts of money. And we haven't had to find our own way to develop an independent state. We just have to take over the laws of West Germany, the political system of Germany. That shouldn't be a really difficult thing, some people might think. But if you look at East Germany, they are not happy at all. You see here fresh figures from last European Parliament election. The pictures showing the political situation in the capital of Germany, in Berlin. You see that in the east part of Berlin, there's still a stronghold of the former Communist Party, the left. And you see that the party of the Chancellor Merkel is only supported by some small islands in the very western part of Berlin, and you see that huge green ocean because our overall European election in Germany was dominated by that climate crisis things, so the Greens had really a big success at the European elections. And look at that. Can you remember that picture from the old days? Yes, of course. You see quite clear the old GDR rebirth. That is a picture that shows the biggest growth of parties. And you see the left, and it's quite the old Federal Republic of Germany, as highly dominated by the Green Party. And you see on the other side a really big dominated party is the AfD. It's called the Alternative of Germany. The Alternative of Germany is not an old party, but it's first time a really successful right-wing, anti-European, more or less pro-Russian party. They regret the refugee politics by Chancellor Merkel and are shocking the actual party system, especially in East Germany. And you see some small green islands in Eastern Germany too. That's the big one is, of course, Berlin, and the other small ones are mostly towns, so the capitals of the states. So there's a division between rural areas who strongly support the right-wing populists and the urban areas what tend to support the post-materialistic Green Party that at first has to fix the climate crisis. And 30 years, that's a long period for a political system to make advertisement, and we see that democracy had failed to convince the majority of the East Germans. So in the afternoon we have the possibility to speak about, is there something like in Homo sovieticus, and you won't expect some of them in East Germany. But if you ask the question, are you satisfied with a democracy at all? Or if you speak about, would you like to support a strong leader who fixed the problems of the country, you still see that that authoritarian answers are most highly supported in East Germany and has less support in West Germany. But for me, it's quite shocking that even if you've been in East Germany in the last years, you see that an economic growth, infrastructure was fixed, so it looks beautiful, but the people are not happy. And that's why. From a perspective more or less abroad, you think that Germany is a wealthy country, economics are behaving well. We are an island of happiness and an ocean of problems, you maybe think. But if you took a closer look, you see that there's still a gap between the rich areas in especially southern Germany and the poor ones in East Germany. So in my state of Brandenburg, we are really lucky because we have the capital in our center. So without that, it would be even worse. And you see that Germans at an average are really wealthy people, but if you take a closer look between the gap between West Germans and East Germans, you see that the West Germans have 2 decades of growth in the Western period, and the gap is not closing. So the East Germans are still, after 30 years, much poorer than the Western Germans. And of course, if you would compare East Germans to Ukrainians, Poles, or some other people, they are well doing, but people try to tend to compare themselves to the better, not to the lower. And when you see what happens right after reunification in East Germany, because being a member of the European Union gave our economy an unseen shock, and there was a breakdown of the economics. You know that really well, I guess. But you see here the pictures of unemployment. When I was young, we saw mass unemployment, and that really dominated the day-to-day feeling of East Germans, the fear to lose their job and the knowledge not to get another one. But you see also that things are getting better. But to be honest, it's not because there's such a growth of employment, but of demographic shifts. You see what has happened with the population between 2000 and 2015. With the exception of the capital area in East Germany, all regions have lost huge amounts of people. And you see that red center in the south of Bavaria. And of course, the population wasn't growing because the Bavarian women delivered babies like mad, not. Because so many East Germans went to the rich West, there was such a huge growth of population, causing problems too in Bavaria, but you say it was a gigantic brain drain. The most smartest people from my generation went from East Germany to find luck in the West. So you see the forecast for the 2030 population statistics, and we have, of course, that effect about the area of the capital, so there is some growth, but we have really terrible figures in the southern of East Germany and in the north, and that's the region with the biggest stronghold for the alternative for Germany. So there's a whole generation that was in my age when the reunification take place, and that lost generation had to recognize 2 or maybe 3 things. The first expectation was, the first knowledge was they lost their job. The second one, their children went to the West. And the third one, they maybe have a job now, but they are well aware of the fact that they never be as rich as the West Germans are now. So with that slightly depressive inside view of the East German society, I would raise your attention on the state elections in September the 1st and October, and 3 of the 5 East German states. So we are really have difficult times to make a stable government, especially in the state of Saxonia, where we have a competition between the Alternative for Germany and the CDU, and even in my normally red country, Brandenburg, we had the AfD as the strongest party in the European elections on last Sunday. And that shows that actually the East Germans are not totally convinced from the old West German model of party democracies, and especially not of the parties representing them like CDU and SPD. Thank you.